Welcome back to the Ingredients for Success podcast. I'm Andrew Rice, and I'm with Jackie Rizzo. And today we have on the podcast Jay Samit, and he is so I'm super honored to have you on, sir. I appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me.
I was listening to a podcast one time. I know exactly where I was. In fact, I was driving from where I live here in Joplin down to Fayetteville. I worked at an agency down there for a short period, and I was listening to a podcast, and they were talking to you, and you were talking. It was right as you were. I think Disrupt You had launched, and you were just kind of talking about the book, and then I shouldn't admit it, but I went and downloaded the book while I was driving because I didn't want to forget. And I read the book, loved the book. So big fan of Disrupt You, Jay.
Thanks for having me.
So if you don't know Jay, Jay is an author. He's international dynamic entrepreneur and intrepreneur. Wired magazine described him as having the coolest job ever. That's right. I would agree with that. I mean, I could go on and on. I want to say a couple more, but literally we would be here all day. Jay's just that cool. So raised hundreds of millions of dollars for startup, advised Fortune 500 companies. Some of those companies are some brands that we know a little bit about. Wish I didn't on some, like McDonald's. Probably shouldn't go as much, but Coca-Cola, Liberty, United Airlines, Apple, a lot of brands, LinkedIn, Microsoft. So
basically everything important Jay has had his hand in some way or another. Right?
Yeah. So there's that. And like I said, we'd be on talking about that forever, and he's blushing, so I will stop. Before we like to do some icebreaker questions, Jay.
Go ahead.
So we do. It's like a speed round, and so I'll say something, and then just you answer in whatever way you want. Before I do that, though, we have a shared interest that I want to talk about just for a second. So your love for art and my love for art are probably, I don't know who would win out, but I went to school for art. I had a professor while I was going to school. His name was Jim Bray, and he was an amazing watercolorist. He actually, you can look up his work online. He had this really cool blend of typography and landscape and even gesture watercolors. So it's really hard to explain without seeing that. But his name's Jim Bray. I'll send you a link after this. But I remember specifically, I was going to school. I was in the little classroom, and I'm talking through future with him. And we got to know each other really well over the couple of years I was at school. And he was just really honest. And he said, I think you're a decent artist. Go do that. Like, I want you, be a studio artist, but don't be me. Like, don't starve. Please go find a job where you're not going to, go against some of the best in the world and end up starving. So he encouraged me to get into graphic design and marketing, and then explore the studio art as I went on. Anyways, that's my deal. But I wanted to say, big fan of your landscapes. I like your architecture and landscapes, Jay.
Thank you.
The abandoned farmhouse and the 66 motel. Where was that at?
Just a made up motel. Thinking back of Route 66.
Wow, awesome. Because we're right on Route 66 where we're at.
We are. Yes.
There's the, isn't it called Boots Motel, Jackie?
It is Boots Motel in Carthage. Yeah, you're right. Mm-hmm.
Have you ever taken the Route 66 tour?
15 times.
15 times. That was my first marathon. Was running through 3 states on Route 66.
Hey, that was my first half marathon.
Was it really?
Yeah. So you probably come through our area, Carthage, Joplin, Missouri area?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Okay.
Northside, Nebraska, Joplin.
Yes. Well, cool. Well, I'm sure you scurried pretty quickly through this area. There's not a lot to see, but anyway.
No, it gave me a real sense of mark. I've been to all 50 states and, seeing the differences. And I think that helped me appreciate as I went into business and really had a sense that not everybody was the same.
I find that this area, there's not a ton to do, but man, the people are different. You know, when you're traveling on business and you're going East Coast or West Coast or wherever, you know, people wave here still when you're just passing them on the road. And there's people are just in general, I think, a little sweeter here, but maybe we're partial. I don't know. So, okay, we're gonna get into icebreakers real quick.
Okay.
So Jay, like I said, we're going to just ask a couple of quick questions and then kind of get your short answers. Here we go. Person with the most influence on your life.
I'd say probably Bill Gates. If somebody hadn't figured out the idea of putting a computer in every home, we wouldn't be having this conversation today. When I was an unknown little startup, I reached out to Bill Gates, the richest man in the world, and asked him if he would do me a favor, and he did. And it's been, happiness ever since.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. Most memorable speaking engagement.
Most memorable speaking engagement. Wow. So I've spoken all over the world. Most memorable. When you're on stage, they're all pretty much the same. I'd say there's an organization called Entrepreneurs Organization. And when I finished the speech, we all had dinner. But what was unusual is we had 1,000 people seated at one table. It was the most amazing thing. It was in a winery in Portugal. And it was the longest table you could possibly imagine. And it was just kind of a cool experience.
Okay, favorite part of mentoring others?
To see people, that moment when they finally believe in themselves. As you know, I just finished a new book that comes out in March. And the story is I took a young man who grew up on welfare, was a couch surfing millennial, and had never really, had a career. And in 11 months, he went from homeless to self-made millionaire. But it was that first month, that moment when in this first month he made $70,000 and he could have flown to Europe without a plane. I mean, he was so much energy coming out of him, and I didn't do it, he did it. And that's what I love about mentoring.
Wow. That's a crazy story. To do something like that, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, but the stuff you do and just the impact you can make is pretty awesome. Okay, so we're gonna painting or writing.
Oh, painting, absolutely. So painting for me is meditation. Painting keeps me sane. For those that aren't familiar with watercolors, unlike oil or acrylic, where you can just keep on slapping more paint until you get it right, the second the brush touches the paper, that's it. There's no changes. There's no painting over. So absolute concentration. So anything else on your mind disappears. So during the pandemic, it was a way couldn't leave the house, but my mind and imagination could.
Yes, I agree with that. And I remember as a kid just escaping in art,
Yeah.
I would
and writing's the opposite. I had a professor in college that said, don't get it right, get it written. Mm-hmm. So meaning just get it all down on paper and then do draft after draft and refine it. And, that's a different process. Both are gratifying, both come easy, but different parts of the brain.
That is so true. Andrew and I work on different parts of the brain. He's more the artsy one and I'm more the writer one. And so when you explain that, I just imagine Andrew and I on different sides of the brain there as we work with one another.
Okay, influential watercolor artist.
Andrew Wyeth comes real top of the list. Edward Hopper. Andrew Wyeth's father, N.C. Wyeth, is hugely influential. The more you paint, the more you get into your art, the farther you get from your icons, the more you realize the genius that goes into their works. Yeah. So always learning.
CrossFit or elliptical?
Boy, you asked me the one sports question I can't answer. I have an elliptical. I hate all exercise. I mean, right. I don't have an athletic bone in my body.
Okay, well, hey, you got the elliptical man. So, favorite supplement?
Favorite supplement?
Yeah, do you have
I'm so excited. It's my favorite. I hug vitamin C. I don't think I have a favorite. I take vitamin C is probably my only supplement.
Okay, cool. Okay, so let's just go ahead and get into it. So you wrote a book, several. You've written several. The one I'm talking about, Disrupt You.
That's it.
Right there. Thank you so much. That is it. That is it. I think it did pretty okay. So I think it's all right. So it's an international bestseller. It's it's really since you launched it. And when we were talking the other day, how many languages is it in?
Well, in 2021, it'll hit 15 languages. I just had one come this morning. Swedish is joining the list. So Icelandic, Swedish, Chinese, Vietnamese. It was number one in Vietnam. Thai, Urdu. It's just amazing. If you have a book in you, I highly suggest getting it out of you and out to the world, because for all my life as a CEO, whether it was a giant company with 300,000 employees or a startup, most of your inbox is why you suck. It's complaints, it's problems, it's what fires you have to put on and everybody that hates you. When you write a book that changes people's lives and helps them live their dreams, you get love letters and mail, and that's what keeps me going. And I've dedicated whatever time I have left on the planet to helping entrepreneurs be successful. I teach a class at the largest engineering university in the US to teach kids how to build high-tech startups. I had 2 students that did $150 million their first year. And it's just rewarding because we live in a time where all the infrastructure is already built. You all have this amazing phone in your hand, and it connects you to 6 billion people.
Right.
So you only have to be right for a nanosecond to make $1 million or change the world. It's up to you.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, like you said, writing a book is one thing, but just I can't imagine how it feels. It makes us all feel good when we help others, but being able to write a book it's got to feel amazing to know that you're touching people and helping their lives. So.
Yeah, and the real insight for me is you wake up one day, yes, I put the first video on computer and the first auction that is eBay and LinkedIn and all these companies that now you just think have been around forever. But you wake up one day and dozens of friends are billionaires, and you go, we're not smarter, we're not well connected, we didn't come from anything. What did all these people that have changed the world have in common? And it's their outlook. And that can be taught. You only need 2 things to be successful: insight and persistence. Insight can be taught, and this book teaches people how to find insights, how to refine their ideas into something that makes sense. And there are no gatekeepers stopping you nowadays. Yeah. Capital's easy to get, markets are easy to get to. There's nothing stopping you but you. So really, that's the biggest first problem. And that's why it's called Disrupt You. Most people have a voice in their head that tells them why they can't succeed. Maybe it was a teacher that told you were stupid. Maybe it was a parent that didn't want to see you fail and get hurt, so they wanted to protect you. Go take the safe job. Well, there are no safe jobs. 100-year-old companies disappear like that. Look what happened just during the first 3 months of the pandemic. How many companies shut the doors forever? So once you realize that you can change yourself and all those negative thoughts aren't real, they're just your perception, and you start putting on a positive mindset, now you are open to possibilities. And that's when it gets exciting. Because here's what's different. You have problems in your life. Everybody has problems. Problems are actually opportunities in disguise. So if you have a problem, odds are other people have the same problem. If you solve a problem for 5 people, you have friends. You solve for 1 million, you become wealthy. When you solve for 1 billion, you change the world. And I've seen how easy it is to change the world. And everybody thinks of changing the world, but no one thinks of changing themselves. And that's why I wrote Disrupt You.
Jay, you've said that disruption is the intense, introspective process of questioning your assumptions about yourself and your goals. Could you expand just a little bit on that in terms of a brand who might be selling supplements or functional foods and beverage?
Okay, so the first part is getting to the stage where you understand that you're malleable, that whatever you thought about yourself can be changed. In third grade, you missed 7 times 7 on a test, and so you convinced yourself you're bad at math. If you put yourself in a third grade class today, you could kick butt and be the top of the class. So obviously these thought processes have to change. When you then look at the supplement market, when you look at any market, there are unmet needs, just as you have unmet needs. So you really have to break down the value chain of where are there holes in the market and where are there new ways to reach people, new products, new solutions, and then try to capture that piece of the market where value is created. Most people make the mistake of building business from end to end when most aspects of a business are money losing. You want to focus on and just build the profitable piece. And that's easy to do. So in the supplement, there's new science coming out all the time. There are new products, but there's also a new generation of customers that has new and different needs. And probably I'd say that the biggest hole that I see is people think that just sell to the market that they know. So if they're in the US, they're selling to the US. Well, that's a pretty small market when you can easily sell to the world for the same amount of effort.
So in our industry, we often see what I call like the monkey see, monkey do's, or the copycats, whatever you want to call them. When it comes to like branding, messaging, packaging, the products themselves, those companies that watch a new brand just kill it. For whatever reason, they cause some disruption, maybe with the technology that they're using, or it's an application method that they're using, because we can look at some of these things like personalized nutrition and how they go about doing that versus what was done 5 years ago. We could talk about technology where you've got your little, there's these pods out now that are water pods, and so disrupting. So there is some disruption happening, but there's still a whole lot of the copycats going on where they see a ghost lifestyle, or they see a brand they really love, and they're just like, okay, I'm going to create a supplement brand, and it's going to look like this, it's going to talk like this, it's going to feel like this, and then they fall flat. Maybe they're a price point leader on Amazon, for whatever reason, maybe they do a little bit of sales, but eventually they aren't that brand. They didn't create the disruption. They are just following suit. So what I would say is, instead of following or becoming just another copycat, how does a brand profit without inventing by applying disruption to new markets or creating services, kind of what you talk about in the book?
Sure. So first of all, the very first person you will educate in business is your competition. So whatever insight and new approach that you come up with, anybody that's already in that market is going to notice it before you even get customers aware, because they're in that market every day and they're going to notice the new product on the shelf or the new ad or the new piece of email, whatever it might be. So expect that. And if anything that you're bringing to the market can be that easily replicated, then you really haven't disrupted. Taking the same ingredients and having a different color bottle isn't disruption. Taking the same ingredients and selling them at a different price point isn't disruption. Combining things that have never been combined, that's disruption. Finding a different way for them to be consumed is disruption. So people opened chains around the country of going in to get vitamin C shots, actual injections. I'm not supporting that. I'm not saying it's not good or bad or whatever. That is a different approach to the market. I don't know what market research led them to do it. I don't know whether it's a good idea, but that's a completely different space. Coca-Cola realized early on that they weren't in the soda business, they were in the liquid business. And their goal was to get everybody within one arm's length of their product. So they realized that if they put small refrigerators in the checkout lines at Home Depot, they'd sell more product. That's disruption. They're finding a different way to get to the market. So that's what I would say in the supplemental space is who's an unmet customer, not who's the same customer that everybody is going for, and where's a place to reach them that is different. And one of the most common things that I advise in the book is called OPM, other people's money. And what I mean by that is whatever target you want, pregnant women, senior citizens, athletes, there is some other giant brand, not in your field, that wants to get that same audience. So why don't you become the solution for that brand of how they're going to reach it? So we talked about McDonald's earlier. You can say what you want, but McDonald's is probably the best marketing machine in the world. They really know what they're doing and how to reach a market. And so when I launched a competitor to iTunes a decade or so ago, I knew that McDonald's, the movie Super Size Me, Spurlock's movie about dying from eating McDonald's, basically, came out. McDonald's had their sales dip for the first time in their history. I said, there's my opportunity. These people need something to bounce back. Now, what does that have to do with selling digital music? Absolutely nothing. It was up to me to come up with the angle. And so I went to McDonald's with the buy a Big Mac, get a free track, put a little download code on each Big Mac. They then spent tens of millions of dollars advertising that you could get a free track. But the only way you could get that was to sign up at my store. So my first week in business, I had 20 million paying customers and my marketing budget was zero. That's disruption. And you can do this again and again. And I've done it with thousands of brands for tons of products because there's always somebody with more money than ideas. And all you have to do is get them to spend their money. And it's better than raising money that takes your equity or raising money that's debt. This is money you don't have to pay back.
Yeah, I love that concept, Jay, for sure.
So it's basically you're saying disruptors see obstacles as opportunities. And a simple mindset comment that I feel like you have, I believe you've mentioned again and again, is that a disruptor doesn't need to have an MBA or an engineering degree. They simply need to think like a disruptor, like you've been describing.
Sure.
So other than buying your book today, how would you challenge individuals within the natural supplement industry to get started on a journey towards being disruptive?
So anybody that's working for somebody else right now probably thinks the boss is an idiot and probably thinks the company they work for is an idiot. And that's pretty common. And the reason is you have ideas and things that you think will work that nobody's listening to. So you have two choices. You can talk them into doing it, or you can start your own business and try it yourself. So the disruption comes from seeing things that could be that aren't. And sometimes you go, well, it seems so obvious. Well, yeah, but everybody's busy doing what they're doing day in, day out. But they're not looking for change. People that made it to the C-suite that are already at the top of the pyramid aren't looking to change. They're just looking to stay there and maintain the status quo. So look at what's a new idea, what's something that hasn't been done, but really, and I try to break down all the steps of research and marketing and sales and every aspect of a business of where the disruption happens so that you can not follow the same thing and use the same pick, pack, and ship guy in the same marketing campaign and buy the same keywords. That's not disruption. That's just competition. I hate competition. And if you really think about it, so does Silicon Valley. All of your tech companies are basically set up to be monopolies. When Travis came up with Uber, the very first things investors do is they gave him $1 billion. Why? Because that's going to stop anybody else from trying to raise $1 million to compete with them. So figure out how to get in your own space. As far as skill sets, everybody hearing my voice right now has written at least as much code as Steve Jobs, who created the first $1 trillion tech company. Steve wasn't an engineer. Steve couldn't write code. Steve couldn't, program blinking light. Wozniak did that. So Wozniak is the engineer. So anything that you can't do can be hired, and let that sink in. When I got out of college And I'm on the wrong side of 50. Well, Star Wars was the big movie, the original one. I mean, it was just life-changing. It was the most amazing thing. And I said, you know what? That's what I want to do with my career. I want to make special effects, computer graphics in Hollywood. A couple of problems. One, I knew nobody in Hollywood. Two, I didn't know how to do special effects. And three, I knew nothing about computers. Other than that, my career was set. So how did I solve that? I said, well, how do you get that job? How do you become that thing? And this was pre-internet. So I took out an ad in Hollywood Reporter, trade magazine, describing the entry-level position, basically, that I would want to get as a job. You know, I want somebody to work on this. And I got a ton of resumes, and that was data. The resumes told me two things. One, what type of job would I need to have to apply for this mythical job? What background? Where would I get my start? And two, all those people that sent a resume obviously had one foot out the door. So here were a list of companies that I knew were going to be having an opening soon. And by putting those together, you solve it. In the book, I talk about a modern version of that, where a young man got out of college, wanted to go and advertise. I thought it was real exciting, wanted to be like Mad Men and have all this creativity. And he's sitting in a cubicle, like, you know, filling out mindless forms. I mean, he hates his job. So he noticed none of the big creative directors that run Omnicom and the other big agencies, no one's ever bought their names as keywords. So for $9, he bought the names of the 5 top guys, and famous people Google themselves to check if there's anything bad out there about them. And when they Googled themselves, said, hey, I want to work for you. Click here to see my portfolio. 3 of the 5 offered him jobs at 5 times the salary, accelerate his career 15-fold for the price of a macchiato. That's disruption. It's going about solving things differently. And you can train yourself to think that way. There are exercises in the book, and there's a workbook to get you to think out of the same step 1, step 2, step 3, and really, you know, accelerate both your thinking and your success.
So I was just involved in a LinkedIn thread yesterday where there was a conversation around, you know, hiring those smarter than yourself, surrounding yourself with people smarter than yourself, but specifically when you hire people with the intention of getting them on board because they know more about whatever it is and you really think they're smarter in maybe all the areas, whatever it is. But the hard part is actually listening and giving up some of that control, especially the founders of these companies. And so I think it's a really hard thing. And we had a really good conversation through that. But something that you're saying, I think, about disruption and employees going to, you said this in the beginning of this, and that was employees going to their leaders and try maybe sharing their ideas, because as you said, and I think it happens a lot, there's a lot of people that aren't necessarily happy with their jobs or think that they have really good ideas how to make some positive change for a company. And I think that it depends on the company, but there are a lot of companies that whether it's the leadership or whatever, they just aren't open to listening to that. And so first, I would say to the company leader that is hiring people in these, you know, for these specific reasons because they know it better, they're more intelligent about these things. What would you say to that company leader? Maybe, I mean, this isn't necessarily just about disruption, but what would you say to that company leader?
So there's a couple things that you touched on. First of all, from the employee perspective, you have a choice in life of either working to make your dreams come true or working for somebody else to help them make their dreams come true. And I never understood the latter. And you have one shot, why not try to take it? And that doesn't mean don't take jobs, because each job you take, you're getting skills and knowledge to make you get further. But if you're in a job where you're no longer learning, then why are you there? Because you're not growing. And if you have great ideas and management isn't listening and they're so obvious and right, then that company will go out of business. So the real question is, don't be afraid of losing your job by sharing, you know, wacky ideas, because if they're not moving forward. Now, to the bosses at the other end, it's not a boss or an owner's job to understand the future. They feel that what they did led them to where they are, and they're right. It's your job to convince people living in the past how to see their role in the future and embrace it. And once you flip it and see it, that it's your responsibility to get them to see that, then the mindset and the onus of change switches. So with employees, one of the things that I've done, and again, I've run companies with hundreds of thousands of employees, and I've sat in a room more than once, starting from day one of here's a new company, and we'll sell it in a couple of years for a couple $100 million. But I always tell anybody that reports to me, I have two rules. The first rule is you don't work for me, I work for you. My job is to give you what you need to succeed at the job that you have. So if you don't tell me what you need, whether it be something simple like a computer or something, complex, like it's going to take 20 people to do this, you have to tell me that. And the second is, if you work for me for a year and you do not make any mistakes, I will fire you. And I'm adamant about that. Because if you're trying something new is about not knowing everything. And the only way you learn is by trying. And failing is part of the process of success. You have to figure out what doesn't work. And if you're afraid to make a mistake, and so many of big companies get this momentum of a dinosaur that's just moving slowly, that people are so afraid of being noticed or losing their jobs that they don't try anything new. And there's your opportunity.
Yeah.
The big guy figures out he has a formula that'll work forever, and nothing lasts forever. The world is too dynamic.
So I love that. What you said, if you don't, there's those two things you mentioned, but if you don't make mistakes, I'll fire you. I agree with that mentality, like it matters. But just of being open and willing to take some risk. How do you grow if you're not taking that risk? I've even heard one of my favorite things that I heard somebody talk about one time, haven't had the opportunity to do it, but they would hand over somebody when they were onboarding somebody as they were hired, they would hand them the resignation letter. And in that resignation was 90 days severance. And so the idea just being, here's your resignation letter. If you're not committed, here's several $100,000 or however much money this is. Here's 90 days severance, and you got 3 months to go find something else if you want it. Do you really want this job? If you really want it, take risks, make mistakes, because those mistakes, we all know, create learning opportunities for us to grow. So I love what you're saying there, Jay. Okay, so Jay, you have another book coming out, Future Proofing You. I know I will maybe not be at the line anymore. There's that book.
Look at that. There it is.
Love it. I like the cover. I like the colors and
I like the color.
I love the clean design of that, Jay.
Yeah, no, they did a great job.
Yeah.
It's hard to see, but it's all the failed technologies,
Oh, yeah.
CD, the cassette, the VHS, video cassettes. And, how do you end up with a company? How do you end up with a career that doesn't become obsolete?
Right.
And so what the genesis of the book, which I talked about earlier, was you get a lot of fan mail. Disrupt You is proven process now that has made a ton of millionaires, made many, many people successful. And I'm not selling anything. There's no upsell. You don't write a book to make money. You write a book to help people. But there were some people that said, this is super motivational, but I could never do it. And I'm like, why do you believe you can't do it? Why do you have a fixed mindset? How do I get you out of it? So in Future Proofing You, I've synthesized everything I could about how the world's changed post-pandemic down to 12 truths. And if you follow these 12 truths, your business will succeed. And to prove it, I took this young kid who had no network, had no entrepreneurs in his family, had nobody with experience. He grew up on welfare. I gave him no money. I didn't tell him what business to start, and I didn't introduce him to anybody. So complete level starting point. And within 11 months, I'm reckoning that it took him less than a year. There's the secret of the book. As you turn through it, you want to know how he's doing. He made his first $1 million with no capital, no connections, and an idea that everybody in their mother already is doing. But when he started putting the process to work, he figured out how to flip the switch. And like I said, in the first 30 days, when he had $70,000 in his pocket, he'd never seen that kind of money. He was out of his mind. And, and that was, the worst month of the year to be able to hit $1 million. So it was really a phenomenal journey. And here's some of the opportunities, and I'll just touch on one that should be obvious to people right now. Your biggest companies now told their employees they can work from home. Microsoft, Twitter, Morgan Stanley, you name who. And what that really means is, for decades, we've been having this virtual company concept where people can live anywhere and work anywhere and all be part of the same company. So what that means to you in your startup business is you don't have to rely on the best people in Joplin. You don't have to rely on the best people 20 miles from where your office is. You can hire the best people in the world. And in other markets, they may be a fraction of what it costs to hire somebody in the US or in a big city.
Yep.
So suddenly you can have the most dynamic company. You can also run that company from anywhere. So I'm from the generation where people worked and worked and worked, and then magically at 65 they retire, go travel the world, and they die. I was vice chairman of Deloitte, 300,000 people. Mandatory retirement for partners is 60. Life expectancy is 66 for anybody that was a partner. They know this from 100 years of being in business. That doesn't sound like a good model. Where today, I'm seeing so many young people that are traveling and working from anywhere. So why not work this month in Thailand? Why not? Your same job, your same company, you can just be down in Costa Rica and doing email and staring at a screen. You can do that from anywhere. So there are so many tools that are free to allow you to run and manage a virtual company. So I really want to outline those to give people that head start. And I also believe in, as I said, data. And here's what the data shows. People that work from home actually work harder, work more hours, have a 40% raise in productivity, and actually cost you less. So why wouldn't you and everybody else do that?
Right. Yeah. So we talk about like this virtual world, and something that we talk about, one of the white papers that we wrote recently and pushed out was just similar to what you're talking about. Like, because of COVID, what it did for a lot of industries was just kind of propelled the obvious. Like, it just expedited, there were companies getting on board with virtual meetings, but there's still a lot of companies that were, and still are, but it opened the eyes, I think, especially when you're talking about maybe it's sales groups out, in the world, and you're talking about all these things. Oh, I've got to go to these sales meetings, or I've got to have these face-to-face interactions. And really I think there was a lot of companies still scared to take things virtual. And I think what this has done is, in one way, specifically, it's opened the eyes to, oh no, I can actually even develop a relationship with somebody, just like, I met you yesterday, Jay. I feel like I've known you my whole life, right? Like, well, probably because, you're like the most interesting man. What's that commercial? Dos Equis, right? You're like the Dos Equis man. But like, that is something that's changed. Something else that you said, Jay, was that, and it really struck a chord. You said something in the beginning. You're talking about this digital change, or you're talking about the virtual world because of this pandemic and how that's evolved or whatever. So we're talking about disruption. One of the things, and it just came to mind, but so I worked for in one of the worlds I've lived in, I worked for a software app and web development company. So I had an ad agency at one time. I had sold it to this company, and they put me inside of this group of companies. And one of the companies they owned was a web app and software company. And like, from day one, I was like, I'm not really sure how this model's working for you. They've got like 40 employees out on the floor. They're all costing an arm and a leg. They're worried about their overhead. They're always talking about the expenses and their profits, and they're just doing like, and I'm like, well, why don't you just cut that staff to zero? Like, I'm not understanding why we don't outsource, keep the executives on board. And I pushed for this for about a year. I eventually then got, well, I didn't get let go. I left. I left the company, and I had a contract with them to stay on until a certain time. Anyway, I left. I started my own web app software company called Morph Development. I recently just sold my share, but it's exactly what you're doing. And I'm going to tell you, this is, I know I'm not just saying this. Books like Disrupt You are why I had the we're going to call it will to do something like that, to leave a job and do this on my own, because and I remember thinking about specifically Disrupt You in this situation. And then I also so what we ended up doing was outsourcing all of it. We didn't take any of the clients, we didn't take anything, but we changed the model completely. And I sold my share, Jackie, like 2 months ago, maybe, or a month ago, I think, and I'm completely out of that. Thank you for that. I will tell you that you definitely influenced that decision. And I think a lot of people, back to your point of if you're not happy as an employee, or there is a way you can do it different, then maybe it's time you explore what that means on how to do different. And if you're a leader who's not allowing people to maybe do that, maybe think about that a little bit differently. So
there's thousands of examples of it. I mean, the founder and creator of WhatsApp, he applied for a job at Facebook. He didn't get the job. He would have gladly given his idea to his boss at Facebook. It would have been Facebook's thing. A year and a half later, Zuckerberg writes him a check for billions and billions of dollars, making one of the 100 wealthiest people on the planet. But he was willing to give that idea away for a job. Jack Ma, the founder of Alibaba,
right,
got turned down for working at Kentucky Fried Chicken. He became a multi-millionaire, almost to the $1 billion, before he had bought his first PC, and he had a digital business. Yeah. I most successful one was, I have a friend who had a 3-person company that sold for $2 billion. Let that sink in.
That's
now the fun part is the 3 employees were him, his mom, and his dad. Wow. So it's the business model that you're creating. The other thing that I really, in my travels and working with people, that I fundamentally missed in Disrupt You, because I assumed people understood how capitalism worked, is in future-proofing you, I explained to people where money comes from. Too many people start a business and think, if I buy, my vitamin C for $1 and I sell it for $2, that's how I make money. I take money from the other person. And that's not where wealth comes from.
Right.
Jeff Bezos became the wealthiest man in the world before he made a profit. Let that sink in. He didn't buy $200 billion worth of stuff and sell it for $400 billion. He lost money. He lost money until he became the richest man in the world. And it works like this. If right now I tell you I'm going to start a business and I will sell you 10% for $1,000, that means my 90% is worth $9,000. So I just made $9,000 out of thin air like magic. And we go to the next round and the company's valued at 40 million. That 40 million isn't 40 million that came from somebody else. Companies are valued on their future potential. So you're bringing future profits into the present and into your pocket. I was CEO of a company that its lifetime value as far as sales was $30,000. I'm sure everybody out there is working in a place that's done more than 30,000. I took over the company, and 90 days later, I took it public for $600 million. Same company, different story. This is what a fundamental difference that people have to understand. We were taught what's called, zero-sum game math. We were taught that there's 5 apples, I have 2, Johnny only has 3. This puts this mindset that that's how the world works, and it isn't. And so every 48 hours, there's a new self-made billionaire.
Yeah.
What are they doing? Most of the millionaires that I know didn't make a profit for the first million. They did something else.
So Jay, it seems like what you are saying is that our excuses are basically our own quicksand. there are own things that get us kind of stuck. But what you're telling us is that no, all of us have access to that same shovel, and we can start shoveling ourselves out. It's just thinking, how are we going to do it?
Right. And if you think about it, it's not your fault.
Right.
We're not taught how to think on our own. We're not taught how to do these things.
Mm-hmm.
The whole purpose of school was to make people that have enough reading and writing to work at a factory. Okay. The IQ test was developed by the military to figure out who's cannon fodder and should be put out to be shot, and who's bright enough to do something else. So no one was raising you to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
They were raising you to be a cog in a wheel.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to show people there's nothing in this book that you're going to read and go, wow, that's crazy. That doesn't make sense. You're going to go, oh, that's obvious. That's obvious. That's obvious. Okay, now I see it. It just hasn't been explained. And
Mm-hmm.
had people seen this, and having watched it happen again and again and again. And I've taken stakes in over 100 startup companies. I've been in all kinds of fields and worked across all kinds of industries. And I've helped giant multinationals. I've worked with presidents. I've worked with Pope. But it's all about the same process. So if you can learn to think that way, you'll never have a shortage of ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the exercises that I have is I ask people to write down 3 problems a day for a month. 3 problems that you have in your life. Nothing could be easier than that. Because every problem is an opportunity in disguise. It's really that obstacle. The solution to it is how you're going to make money. So you write down the first day, you got traffic, you got this, you got that, realize. But by day 2 or day 3, you literally don't have any more problems. They're still there. You just don't see them because you think that's the way it is. And once you start having to scratch the surface of things you don't know, I have a reader that has become a dear friend. Woke up one morning, taking his medicine, the phone rings. Gets off the phone. Wait a second. Did I take my pill or didn't I? Did I take my supplements or didn't I? Well, if I did and I take them again, I could OD. And if I didn't, then I won't get better. And, he realized, wait a second, this is a problem. So he took a 25-cent little watch like you would get on a Happy Meal little kid's toy, put on a bottle cap, and every time you open it, it resets it. So it goes, oh, I opened this 8 hours ago. Obviously, I didn't take my pill. Oh, I opened this 3 minutes ago. Obviously, I did. Became timer cap. Sold it to drugstores, sold it to pharmaceutical companies. Went so far as to realize you could then make it where it could have Bluetooth. And then I could know whether grandma took her medicine, or a doctor could allow when you can open and when you can't to help one opioid or taking overdosing on drugs. So a simple momentary problem. The traffic problems, 3 kids in Tel Aviv were in traffic, and it dawned on them. The phone company knows where I am. They tell me to go left and the other guy to go right. There's no traffic. That was the genesis of Waze. We sold it for over $1 billion the first year with $0 in revenue.
Wow. Yeah,
we were so the problems are so huge that you just have to identify them.
Right.
You don't have to know how to solve it.
Right.
You can hire those people.
Yeah. I love your idea of writing 3 problems a day. I do 3 goals a day. I'm going to add 3 problems a day to that. I've done the 3 goal thing for several years now. What are the 3 things I need to get done today? I got to get them done today because we all get thrown. But I'm going to add the 3 problems a day to that. The most successful companies out there are solving problems. That's why they're so successful.
Right. And here's the second part of it. At the end of the month, you'll have 90 ideas. And you need to sort them along 2 axes. One is what affects the most people. When I teach the class at the university level, every semester there's a student that's going to have a business to deliver food to the dorms. I'm like, really? How many people are in the dorms? Your whole total addressable market is this big, right? Doesn't make sense. So you want a big addressable market. That's one aspect. Everybody needs this. Where millions of people need this solution. The second, more important axis is what are you passionate about? The purpose of life is to live a life of purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So unless you really believe in the mission, if the mission is just making money, yeah, maybe you'll make money once or twice, but it really won't give you satisfaction. For anybody that's made it this far into this wonderful episode, I have a gift for you. I have a 40-page workbook that's free, so you can start working on yourself, working on disruption, working on your insights to build a better life for you and your family. You just have to go to my website, jaysamit.com, JAYSAMIT.com, and click the link, and we'll send you the workbook so that you can start your future today, not tomorrow.
Awesome.
I love
so
that.
appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You know, I will say, I know that our audience has learned a lot. I think most audiences do when you're speaking, especially. I love the passion you have for helping others. You can feel it, you exude it, and so I really have a great admiration and appreciation for that. I know the audience here has learned a ton from you. Honored to have you on. So thanks for your writings. I just really appreciate you coming on today. Looking forward to the new book, Future Proofing You. When that's launched?
So you can order it now on Amazon. It helps me if you pre-order, only because it gives it better ranking in their algorithms.
Okay.
Exposed to it.
Yeah.
But it comes out in first quarter of 21.
Okay.
Really it's a unique book. It's there's a million books out there that claim, get rich quick schemes and all this stuff. I've yet to see one that where somebody put their reputation to the test, right?
Mm-hmm.
Took somebody at random and will it work or won't it? And hopefully that's the proof to get anybody over that fear.
That is good. I think that for us, we constantly have heard that you try to avoid fear. Don't be afraid. But the way that you just put it is that it's actually our ally and we should embrace it. And embracing it, it'll actually take us further. So That's super exciting. Mm-hmm.
So let me talk about fear for a second. It's one of the topics in Future Proofing You that I didn't address in the earlier book. Fear holds most people back. People are afraid of making mistakes, all kinds of fears. But what people don't realize is that person across the table, the person you're trying to sell to, the person you're trying to recruit, raise money from, or whatever, they have fears too. And if you can learn what fears motivate others in different situations, you can use those to your advantage and your success. So fear is actually a tremendous tool in being successful. And most people don't understand it. So.
Yeah, I think we don't understand it because we've been told, you can speak into this, but we've been told most of our lives, don't fear, because fear is what stifles you. It just puts you kind of like in that cement place where you don't move forward. But what you're saying is actually we can use that for our growth.
The only reason you exist is because your great caveman father was afraid of saber-toothed tigers. The guy next to him wasn't afraid, and he didn't make it. So every one of your ancestors was afraid. That's why they survived. Mm-hmm. Fear is part of our lizard brain. It's in the center core of our brain. It's the flight or fight response. And so if you can activate that in a sales situation, people will respond. And I'll give you a concrete example. Going back a decade ago, as hard as it is to imagine, nobody in politics believed social media made a difference. This was when Obama was running for president. And you had, tons of people on Facebook, but everybody was spending all their money on television. Campaign managers were all in their 60s and 70s, and, social media didn't exist. So not a dollar was being spent. And I had a digital agency at the time. I'm like, wait a second. $2 billion is going to be spent on this election cycle. I want my piece of that. And I realized nobody was spending, Republicans, Democrats, nobody was spending any money. So I booked up travel plans, tell the story quickly, to meet with the campaign managers of the 4 leading candidates, 1 Democrat, 3 Republicans. And I let them each know my schedule. I had to meet them in the state because I was in such and such city on the other dates, meaning I'm going to meet their competition. And in that situation, suddenly the campaign manager has to do a strategic thought. If the other guys use social media and it turns out it's important and I didn't, I could lose my job. I may never get to work on another campaign. I'm now in the fear mode. What is this kid Jay talking about? And I did that to each of them thinking that the others were. And I ended up all 4 of them hiring me. And each one said, well, if you work on our campaign, you can't work on anybody else's. I said, well, you don't say that to ABC or NBC. And so that's how I got both parties to hire my company. And that a year later, because of that growth that it gave our company, I sold the company to News Corp and sold for $200 million.
Wow.
Wasn't.
Yeah, I think oftentimes, like Jackie said, and like everything you're saying right now, is I think we definitely have to listen to our fear. We have to be in tune with our own fear. And if we're trying to build something or grow something, be in tune with other fears and what motivates them as well. I guess I need to thank my great grandparents for being afraid of a saber-toothed tiger, because then I wouldn't be here. So I love that analogy as well.
And let me do the positive corollary, which I also talk about in both books. The best way to solve for you is to solve for others. Your success comes from making other people successful. Your happiness will come from making other people happy. And the more you get out of thinking about yourself, the more enjoyment you get in life, and the more success.
Man, I love it. I love it. And I think it's something hopefully most people learn as they get older, is just being less selfless. And I think it's a great point. So I know you're a busy man. We so appreciate you coming on the show, Jay, and sharing all of your wisdom on these topics. And so, good luck with the book. I know it's going to do great. Any of the engagements you have, there it is again. I'm going to go pre-order. I'm going to go pre-order. So you see,
I am too. Definitely.
Ding. Now you'll have 2 more dings for your pre-order. So,
yes. So the reason why pre-orders, I mean, really, our whole lives are run by algorithms. You don't pick what you're watching on Netflix. They're suggesting, you don't pick what you're clicking through. Well, books work the same way. If Amazon sees a bunch of pre-orders, then they promote it more in their algorithms when, people have bought this book or that book. No, they really do. They just tell you that. And so the earlier I can get those, and the more, and then all those count in your first week sales. And to be the #1 selling book in the US, you only need to sell about 6,000 copies.
Oh, wow.
That's not that many.
That isn't.
But you have to do those all by that first week. So anyway, appreciate the help. Appreciate you spreading the word. And hopefully I can help people achieve and shorten the journey to their success.
I know you can. I know you can, sir. Thanks for being on, and we'll talk to you soon.